The Zarlequan Universe. Today on the show, we have a special guest, John JR Rennie, who is on a mission to help people discover their God given purpose and design. He's an author of four and a half incredible books, including BrushFires Mentoring Manual. These books are not just about reading, but about transformation and guiding others to their own divine destinies. I'm delighted to have him share his wisdom with us. Welcome, John JR Rennie, to the show.
Well, thank you, Brittany, for that introduction. I appreciate the opportunity of speaking to your friends, and hopefully they'll find our conversation something that will benefit them down the road.
Awesome. John, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you down this path of helping others discover their God given purpose and design?
I can. It was never my intention to go down this line. My background is I've been in the technology industry since the late 70s, and in 1987 with a friend started a software company that created wholesale distribution, manufacturing, accounting software. And that was my plan, was that, all right, this is a good industry. I had a lot of expertise in that, and was expecting that to go until my late 60s, and then I would begin to wind it down. And in 2014-15, there was a series of circumstances that by the end of 2015, I lost about 2/3 of our revenue that came in on a yearly basis. And it was the first time in over 30 years that we had ever had any kind of significant loss. And I had reinvented the company at least 3 times during that 30 years. But I looked at it in January 2016. I go, I can't do it again. I'm so burned out with the industry and the market. And I knew that I had to wind down the company, which left a lot of time on my hands. The company is still going technically because we have clients throughout North America, and I've got employees that are supporting those clients. But because of that loss in 2015, I had to stop taking a paycheck so that I could sustain that for our employees. And I found, like I said, a lot of time on my hand. And spring of 2016, I was sitting at the chair I'm looking at right now, and I said out loud, all right, God, I know you're behind this. What do you want? Because it wasn't like the consequences of bad choices that the company failed. It was a series of things that with an employee that just snowballed to that point. And so 2016, I sat writing short stories and poems and articles that just I found interesting. And by the end of 2016, an acquaintance came up to me and said, "Hey, I teach this personality assessment training program. I think you'd be really good at it." Now, he didn't really have an altruistic intent. He charged a sizable amount of money for doing this. And my initial reaction was, no, thank you. If you've ever wound down a business and gone without a paycheck at that point for about 10 months, you cut all unnecessary expenses. And this seemed like an easy one to cut. But later on that day and the next day, I felt this tug from God that said, do it. And so I wound up signing myself up with my wife, and we started going through the training to understand these proprietary assessments. And within a short period of time, I recognized how accurate they are. I mean, at my age, I had gone through a number of various assessment types of programs. And I go, this nailed me really thoroughly. And then, by having my wife do it, it was like, and she's also, that's her. And so we continued the training. And at some point in time, the epiphany was, this is for the church. It's always been used for the corporate world. It was used for Clorox and IBM and Coca-Cola and large multinational corporations. And I go, yeah, but this is for the church. And about May of 2017, I took my purpose statement, which is the end result of going through these assessments, which reads, I must strategically lead a gifted team to embrace the power of their God-given design for long-term positive results. And I asked myself, if you really believe that, what are you going to do about it? And that's when BrushFires was conceived. I had to write the curriculum, which I'd never done before. And so that got me onto the author track here. And we launched the very first 8-week workshop in February 2018 after getting the curriculum together.
Wonderful. So, can you give us a couple of highlights or key points in this whole, what do you call it, workshop?
Yeah. So the big of it is that every human being is uniquely made by God, and the giftings and talents that you have been given are intended to be used to help mankind, to make this a better place, a better world, if you will. And to do that, as a believer, it is a matter of God actually working through you. So wherever your natural talents and abilities end, when you're actually doing what God wants you to do, he steps in, and all of a sudden things that you never thought were possible start to happen. We call them miracles, we call them coincidences, whatever you want to call them. And so the curriculum itself for the workshop is all based around helping a Christian understand that they are made intentionally, that it's not an accident, that there are things set aside before they took the first breath that God wants to do through them. And if they simply align their personal agenda with God's agenda for their life, that they are able to begin to walk this out. They can actually start to do things that God always intended for them to do. And it's really about helping other people, helping them heal, helping them grow, leading them, wherever your giftings happen to lead you.
Well, as you well know, discovering your life's purpose or your God-given purpose can be a lifelong journey. What kind of insights can you offer to us that might help us get there a little faster?
Well, the one is, I wish this was around when I was 18, so that I could have saved myself a lot of flailing around and pursuing things that ultimately were not very fulfilling or satisfying. So the sooner the better. Really, the sooner that you start pursuing those things, the better. You'll know if God is in the midst of what it is that you're doing, because there's a certain amount of joy that is experienced when you are in alignment with what it is that God wanted to do with you. I'll give you an example that certainly most mothers can relate to. Back in 2013, long before the BrushFires, I wrote an article called "What is Joy?" And these articles can be found on our website, so they're for anybody to fuller look at them. But the concept was this: there is an apostle Paul who wrote most of the epistles from prison. So he's really, living in a really bad condition, chained to a Roman centurion, because that's the way they did things. And his experience with doing what God wanted him to do was being shipwrecked, being stoned, being beaten, being persecuted, being lied to, being imprisoned, on and on and on. And not just once, but multiple times on all accounts. And yet he says, consider it all joy, that it didn't matter. I'm going, how can that be? How can you go through such terrible personal, physical trauma and consider it all joy? I just didn't get that. And that's where we get into the difference between happiness and joy. Happiness is the circumstances around you are agreeable, that you like. I enjoy ribeye steak, medium rare. So put a well-prepared ribeye steak in front of me, and I'm happy at that moment. But, the steak goes away, and, the circumstances that created that are no longer there. And so you still don't have that same existence. Joy is different. Joy is not dependent upon the circumstances around you, but it is an internal fuel that causes a person to be able to still feel hopeful and have faith and be uplifting, if you will, even in the midst of being shipwrecked or being beaten and so forth. And I was trying to figure out what that was all about. And the easiest example that I can come up with, and this is where the mothers come into play. We have 3 children, and I was around for all 3 of our kids going through the birthing process and all the 9 months leading up to that. And I saw what my wife went through, but there's no way that I actually knew what she went through, because there's no way for me to experience that. But in each case, when that healthy baby is placed in the mother's arms, there is a moment of joy. It's like the 9 months were worth it. The birth pains were worth it. The delivery process was worth it, because there is a healthy baby there in your arms. And the epiphany I got was this. At that point in time, that woman's life, one of the most important things, because God loves life and he's the author of life, was for that lady to bring into this world that healthy baby. And so for that moment in time, her agenda, her life choices intersected with God. His intention for her and her intentions aligned. And that intersection is where joy is created, where you're doing exactly what you were created to do in that particular case. And so I took that thought and I extended it out to Paul, and I go, he could be joyful because he was doing what God wanted him to do. He was experiencing that unique joy that was set aside for him to be able to make an impact for centuries. He wrote, 2/3 of his life had meaning and joy because he was finally doing what it is that he was created to do. And I want that. I want to be able to experience that. I want it to be able to sustain me through difficult times. And I want to know what that feels like. And ideally, and this is, again, the unique thing about this article is that it was written in 2013. I want to do that for other people. You see, my spirit internally knew that that was what I was created to do, even before I had my purpose statement, even before the idea of BrushFires was conceived. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of helping other people discover that for themselves, so that I could watch them experience joy, which would then give me joy.
So, do you speak at conferences, or how do people get a hold of you, and what do you offer?
So, the workshops have all been done up until this date here in the Pacific Northwest. We recently did a conference, which was a one-day conference at a pregnancy center, hence me having to write that half book I mentioned earlier. And we also do the 2-day seminars at churches where we will travel and be there on a Friday, Saturday, and work with their congregation. We are absolutely about to extend our reach well beyond the Pacific Northwest. We have a digital workshop, which is a recording of our teaching, all 8 sessions of our workshop program, that has now finally made it all the way through the editing process. It's being uploaded to our new site, which is brushfires-digital.com. And we are about to go through the beta testing process where we'll have a couple people kick it around. But ideally, somewhere around Thanksgiving, we'll have this released for the public, and they'll be able to go through the work at their own pace, either through a small group or a book study or whatever they want to do, and take the assessments online, and obviously get the workbook that we would include in that package, and be able to implement this on their own, and then reach out to us if they wanted the design discovery meeting, which is how they get their purpose statement. And we do that as a 2.5 to 3 hour coaching session where we dive deep into that person's specific wiring, the results of the assessments that they took. And that's where we come up with the purpose statements for the individuals.
Nice. So it sounds like it's you and your wife. Is that correct?
Yeah, my wife. So one of the things about going through the assessments is allowed me to appreciate my wife in ways that I never could put into words before. Her design is very complementary to mine, and vice versa. But so when I started doing the assessments, I naturally just drug her with me to go through that training. And she is part of the design discovery meeting process. She does a lot of the behind the scenes things, such as our PowerPoint presentation and the accounting for the various entities that are connected to this um, program, and has been an encouragement and a huge aid throughout this entire process. So yes, my wife and I do it together, but we've been fortunate enough to also add other leaders and people that have come on board this last year that are actually stepping up in a more upfront leadership position. Kristen and Lauren Miller joined us about a year or so ago, and they brought their expertise. Kristen was in full-time ministry for 15 years in her past, so she has brought that insight. And both Kristen and Lauren are also speakers at our events and conferences.
Wonderful. So you said the Pacific Northwest. Where exactly are you?
So we live in the Coeur d'Alene, Idaho area. So that is in the Panhandle section of Idaho, and we've been ministering to churches in Washington and throughout Idaho directly. It's the 8-week program restricts it to be local because there's so much information in just one of our sessions that a person really needs time to digest it, to be able to really understand it before we hit them with another session. That's why the digital product is so valuable, because people can go at it at their own pace. They can sit there and ponder what we're saying. They can compare notes with their loved ones about assessment results, and they can kind of go at their own pace, and they can do it from the comfort of their home or church or whatever it is that they want to do. But we're anxious to be able to share this. It's interesting. Since we started this program, a number of our graduates have moved out of the area to other parts of the country, or they have family members, and they're all anxious for us to hand them this digital tool so that they can share it with their loved ones that are out of state, or they can start sharing it with their own community in the Carolinas or in Georgia or wherever else they have landed since running into us in Idaho.
Also, actually, Coeur d'Alene is a beautiful area. What a
It
great
is
place to discover your purpose.
it is easily the prettiest place I have ever lived, and I've lived in Florida and California before this, and yeah, we are blessed to live here. It really is gorgeous.
It is. I agree. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story and all about your ministry.
We appreciate the opportunity to be able to get the word out there, and hopefully your followers will give us a look. They can get the workbook or any of our books directly off of our website at brushfires.group. And if they're interested in the digital release, simply go to our brushfires.group website and go to the contact me section. And there is an area to say, hey, I'm interested in being notified when you release this, and we will let them know when it's available for the public to consume.
Our wonderful audience, all the links to John JR Rennie's website will be in the description box below. So grateful that you came on to share all of this. Your books, BrushFires Workshop Workbook and BrushFires Mentoring Manual, offer profound insights and practical guidance for those on their spiritual journey. Remember, the path to spiritual growth is an ongoing one, and John's work provides valuable support along the way. We encourage you to explore his books and the transformative journey they offer. Thank you so much for joining us today and for allowing John to share his wisdom with us. As we conclude this conversation, keep in mind that we are all on unique paths of self-discovery and purpose. Until next time, this is Brittany Starr, and remember to stay magical, my friends.